The world has enough wealth and resources to ensure that the entire human race enjoys a basic standard of living. Yet, people in some countries continue to live in poverty. In this video, we consider the top 10 poorest countries in the world. And number 10 is Madagascar. Located 400 kilometers off the coast of East Africa, Madagascar is the fourth largest island in the world. Known for its astonishing wildlife, the flourishing tourism industry has not been able to lift the country out of poverty. The majority of the population is still dependent upon agriculture for their livelihoods, leaving the country's economy especially vulnerable to weather-related disasters. Since becoming independent from France in 1960, Madagascar has experienced periods of political instability, violent coups, and disputed elections. At number 9 is Chad. Chad remains plagued by political violence and recurrent attempted coup d'etat. Chad has a low ranking in the Human Development Index and is a part of the least developed countries, facing the effects of being one of the poorest and among the most corrupt countries in the world. Most of its inhabitants live in poverty as subsistence herders and farmers. Since 2003, crude oil has become the country's primary source of export earnings, superseding the traditional cotton industry. Regional conflicts, in combination with environmental degradation, rapid desertification, and intercommunal tension over diminishing natural resources, have contributed to exacerbate hunger and poverty in the country. And number 8 is Malawi. Malawi is one of the world's least developed countries. The economy of Malawi is heavily based on agriculture, and it has a largely rural and rapidly growing population. The Malawian government faces challenges in its efforts to build and expand the economy, improve education, healthcare, and environmental protection, and become financially independent despite widespread unemployment. In recent years, Malawi has made strides in improving economic growth and implementing crucial structural reforms. Nevertheless, poverty is still widespread, and the nation's economy, which is largely dependent upon rain-fed crops, remains vulnerable to weather-related shocks. As a result, while living standards in urban areas are broadly improving, food insecurity in rural parts is extremely high. And number 7 is Mozambique. Mozambique remains one of the top 10 poorest countries in the world, with large sectors of the population continuing to live well below the poverty line. While a 15-year-long civil war ended in 1992, severe climate conditions, corruption, and political instability never went away. Mozambique is endowed with rich and extensive natural resources. The country's economy is based largely on agriculture, but the industry is growing, mainly food and beverages, chemical manufacturing, aluminium, and petroleum production. South Africa is Mozambique's main trading partner and source of foreign direct investment, while Belgium, Brazil, Portugal, and Spain are also among the country's most important economic partners. Since 2001, Mozambique's annual average GDP growth has been among the world's highest. However, the country is still one of the poorest and most underdeveloped countries in the world, ranking low in GDP per capita, human development, measures of inequality, and average life expectancy. At number 6 is Niger. With 80% of its landlocked territory covered by the Sahara Desert and a rapidly growing population largely dependent upon small-scale agriculture, Niger is under threat from desertification and climate change. In 2021, the United Nations rated Niger the least developed country in the world. Over the years, the country's situation has only worsened as the humanitarian context grows dire due to insecurity, hunger, the climate crisis, and COVID-19. All of these elements make the cycle of poverty even more difficult to break for millions of Nigerians living on less than $1.90 per day. And number 5 is Somalia. 3 decades of internal violence and conflict resulted in the displacement of hundreds of thousands of people, frequent droughts and floods followed by famine and disease, lack of access to health services, massive levels of unemployment among especially young people. This country of 16 million in the Horn of Africa never seems to catch a break. The sustained GDP growth shown in the later part of the last decade was interrupted in 2020 by the compounded effect of the coronavirus pandemic, an infestation of locusts unprecedented in modern times, and intensified floods, which caused the economy to contract. Then, when a tenacious recovery was underway, the blockage of Ukraine's wheat exports plunged the country further into despair, filling local health facilities with severely malnourished children. At number 4 is the Democratic Republic of the Congo. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is extremely rich in natural resources, but has suffered from political instability, a lack of infrastructure, corruption, and centuries of both commercial and colonial extraction and exploitation, with little widespread development. More than 80% of Congolese people live on less than $1.25 a day, defined as the threshold for extreme poverty. Instability from years of war and political upheaval is one of the most significant causes of poverty in Congo, while poverty and youth unemployment has ignited conflicts. The Democratic Republic of the Congo is home to raw mineral ores worth an estimated $24 trillion, which has been the driving force for one of the world's most devastating conflicts since World War II. And number 3 is Central African Republic. Despite its significant mineral deposits and other resources, such as uranium reserves, crude oil, gold, diamonds, cobalt, lumber, and hydropower, as well as significant quantities of arable land, the Central African Republic is among the 10 poorest countries in the world. Approximately 71% of the Central African Republic's population lives below the international poverty line. As of 2019, according to the Human Development Index, the country had the second lowest level of human development, ranking 188 out of 189 countries. The country also had the lowest inequality-adjusted Human Development Index, ranking 150 out of 150 countries. And number 2 is South Sudan. South Sudan is the newest nation in the world. It gained independence in 2011, 6 years after the agreement that ended the conflict with Sudan, Africa's longest-running civil war. However, violence has continued to ravage this landlocked state of roughly 11 million people. South Sudan exemplifies the paradox of nations whose resource abundance fosters, rather than progress, inequality, social and political divisions, corruption, and lack of economic diversity. Outside the oil sector, the majority of the population is employed in traditional agriculture, although violence along with alternating droughts and floods often prevents farmers from planting or harvesting crops. And number 1 is Burundi. The small landlocked country of Burundi, scarred by ethnic conflict and civil war, has the rather unenviable distinction of topping the world's poverty ranking, with about 90% of its nearly 12 million citizens relying on subsistence agriculture, and the overwhelming majority of them living in extreme poverty. Food scarcity is a major concern. The level of insecurity is almost twice as high as the average of sub-Saharan African countries. Furthermore, access to water and sanitation remains very low, and less than 5% of the population has electricity. Despite the civil war formally ending 15 years ago, lack of infrastructure, endemic corruption, and security concerns have contributed to it being the poorest country in the world. Now you know the top 10 poorest countries in the world. And with that, we call it a wrap. If you're yet to subscribe to our channel, we suggest you do so. Remember to like, share, and comment on this video. Thank you for watching.